The Lotus Europa. I've always loved its crazy shape, and for years and years and years, ever since I was a kid, I've wanted one. And now finally, I actually got it about a year ago, but I just got it on the road. So, what's it like meeting your hero? Let's find out. Well, it's certainly not your everyday garden variety classic. It definitely stands out. Some people say it looks like a bread van. Some might call it a shooting brake as well. A shooting brake is basically a two-door station wagon, and it has that look too, even if it's not a true hatchback with storage. It might be reminiscent of other Lotuses in places, but in terms of everything else on the road in that day, and even now, it's extremely unique and it really stands out. I love that. Like all great exotic cars, it has an absolutely ridiculous rear window that's very hard to see out of. They actually changed this shape in later versions to improve visibility. They brought it down here, kind of like this, but this is the original and truly unique, and my favorite. Lots of people modify them and put more modern wheels on them, but I think these originals look kind of cool and classic. I think this is my favorite angle, but to me, it really doesn't have a bad angle. I just love the shape. Inside its classic 70s sports car, there's a large sill that you have to kind of slide across to get in, and it's very tight, but no nonsense and all about the business of going fast. Check out the seats and how they contour to your body. You're actually in a laid-back position, almost lying on your back, it seems, when you're driving, but it's very sporty and very simplistic too, in terms of what you get these days. For the age of this car, 46 years old, I think really it stood the test of time very well. The seats are still in good shape, and keep in mind this one is all original, just 23,000 and change miles. The headliner even looks decent. There is some trim and such missing, but I do have that, and no carpet even, but you can see the clutch cable there, but those pedals, very close together. If you have really big shoes, or if you're really tall in general, I'd say over 6 feet, good luck getting in. It's very cramped quarters in there, but it's just very unique and kind of a time machine back to the day. You do get a little bit of storage there in the door, believe it or not. The open glove box, and you know, this piece of wood here was actually an upgrade from earlier versions, but as you can see with time, it gets a bit weathered and aged looking, but hey, you know, classic wood and classic vinyl and leather, all great components to a 70s supercar. There's not too many knobs and controls to work with. You do get a choke here, 4-speed with reverse right here, and power windows. And of course, every car needs an ashtray, right? Of course it does. Especially in the late 60s and early 70s. You get some ventilation, although I'm not sure if it works very well in this one. Fuel gauge, temperature gauge, oil gauge, and amps as well. Plus, ooh, a very sophisticated radio too. You get lights, of course, and wiper washer, and believe it or not, the wipers actually work, albeit not by today's standards. Turn signal stalk, this really cool sporty Lotus steering wheel, very nice, and the steering is quite light, and there's really nothing up front weighing the car down, of course. Here you have a cool tachometer with a rev limiter right about 6,000 RPMs, and your speedometer with 23,627 showing on the odometer. Note that it goes up to 130 miles per hour. A little optimistic. The A-pillars are surprisingly small, so you can actually see out front pretty well, but there's no rear view mirror like I said, and it's pretty tough to see out back through the window too. So, what's under the hood, you ask? Well, it's a very light fiberglass hood, and well, I got a bunch of original parts that were taken off in the restoration, and here's the Renault 1.5 liter that doesn't like to idle very much, but it's fine once you get going. It makes about 85 horsepower, and 0 to 60 takes just under 10 seconds. Not very fast today, but back then it certainly was considered pretty quick. Pop open the front here, and that's of course where the trunk is. Some storage, not too bad considering the size of this car. I got a new aluminum radiator here with a nice cooling fan to keep it cool, and you even get a spare tire there too. Nice. Especially since it appears we have the original Firestone tires here as well. Good to have a spare. There's even a builder's plate down here. This one was built in August of 1970. Now these are, of course, fiberglass, and while that won't rust, chassis underneath can rust. That's a big problem with these. And also kind of these spider cracks that you see all around the car. You know, fiberglass is tough to maintain over time, but this one, it's really a survivor. Only 23,000 original miles. It was actually in storage, the story goes, since 1975, and I have pictures and an owner history to back that up, and to back up the claim of 23,000 original miles. So it's really a survivor. Like I said, it appears to have the original tires, and it's just definitely a time machine. Even if it's not the prettiest one out there, I really like its all original appearance, and as I said before, man, I just love the shape. Let's go driving. So the Lotus Europa was born because Ford was building the GT40, and manufacturers like Cooper and Lola were competing for the bid, and Lotus, of course, was competing for the bid, but they actually chose the Lola Mark VI. So the rest is history, and Lotus said, hey, we've done this development, so we're going to make the car. And the first couple of years, being the Europa, they actually made it for the European market, so it was only sold over there. And then with the S1, it was basically a chassis with a glued-on body, and the windows didn't even open, so it was very, very sparse, and even more sparse than this one. This is a very sparse car, but at least the windows go down and everything. And this Lotus Europa S2 Federal, this is the one that they sent to America. They had a problem with the headlights because they were too low, so they had to raise those up a little bit. The car kind of is up higher in the front, so that's why they call it a boat effect. But you don't really seem to notice once you get used to it. So the Lotus Europa was extremely light with its fiberglass body. 1,350 pounds, about 612 kilograms, and mid-engined, it just handles amazingly. The steering is so precise. The turning radius is absolutely horrible because you want that to make the handling incredible, and you can really feel everything on the road in this car. You can feel every little bit of feedback from the front wheels. You know exactly what they're doing, and it really is surprisingly fun to drive. It's definitely a Formula One car for the street, and that's what makes it so amazing. That's why it's become so legendary. This is what it's all about. Winding it out on a twisty country road. The handling is so neutral. And with the steering wheel, even though it's 46 years old, you feel like you can place it on a dime. The feel like you can clip every apex. Pedals are very close together for heel and towing, and it really is a race car, Formula One car for the street. You feel every little bump, feedback on the steering wheel. You can feel exactly what's going on, and it's really, really incredibly fun to drive, despite the fact that it's not a huge engine. So the whole philosophy with Lotus cars, and Colin Chapman, who was of course the founder, was simplify and add lightness. And that's exactly what this Europa is all about. It's about as simple as it can be. No power steering, just discs up front, rear drum brakes, and a fiberglass body over a simple chassis. And it is light and maneuverable, and handles absolutely like a dream. This is actually the defrost switch, and when you turn it on, it operates the fan, so it's like a fan override. You can crank these vents, and they let air through, and you actually control the air through this little white gizmo down there, and you can turn it on and off, and that's how you get heat and then defrost as well. So again, it's totally simplified, but it is light, and it does have everything you need, and really nothing you don't. My car was born red. I'm not sure if it was put on the road until like 71 or so, but it was then painted in the 70s, the John Player Special black with gold trim. And that's special because in 1972, Lotus won the World Championship with their F1 car in that black and gold livery, the JPS John Player Special, and that's why it's so popular for Lotus. Emerson Fittipaldi won the World Championships for F1 in 1972, and so the rest is history. One of the first Lotus Europas I've ever seen was a John Player Special, and so it's really special for me. But getting behind the wheel of this car, it's a legend to me. I had the Matchbox car as a kid, and I still do. I collect Matchbox cars, and I have many different versions of the Lotus Europa. And just as much as I love staring at the Matchbox car, I love peeking out my window and staring at this Lotus Europa. It's just a great shape to me, and it's just so incredibly cool. And you know, meeting a legend, like meeting a famous person, can be a letdown. But in this case, for me, I'm really happy with the Lotus Europa. I mean, it's tough to drive, it's tough to even sit in, and it's tough to see around, and you're constantly scared because you're so much smaller than anyone on the road. You certainly don't want people to be texting and driving around you, and it's just an incredible sense driving a car this small. Everything looks huge next to you. Everything. From Mazda Miata to an 18-wheeler or just today's average SUV. It's scary being next to other cars in this. It's just so small. But that's part of the charm also. People see this car and they just can't believe it. They're just amazed by the look of it. And it just gets some crazy stares on the street, definitely. You know, meeting a legend like maybe your favorite celebrity or actress can be extremely intimidating, and it can be a letdown. But I met Robbie Krieger, the Doors guitar player, and he was very cool. He actually played my guitar, wanted to buy my Gibson SG. That's pretty much what he plays exclusively. But I said, no, please sign it. And he wrote the Doors, Robbie Krieger on it. And it was great meeting him. He was very personable and not a letdown at all. Very, very cool. But meeting this Lotus Europa for the first time and really getting intimate with it and having that ownership experience where you start it up in the morning and see how it really performs, work out all the little kinks, and that's really been something with this. And you know, this morning it fired right up first time, and it's been running like a top since I got it on the road. Of course, it took a while to get it on the road because it's really, really tough to get all these parts, you know? If you want a radiator, you might have to go to Europe to get it. If you want a gas tank, well, that's very tough. In fact, I just had mine rebuilt at a company out of Pennsylvania, great company, and just getting parts for this car is just not very easy. And you can certainly customize these cars. A lot of people put on different wheels, a lot of people put in different engines, different more modern Ford engines, or even Mazda rotary engines. Even the Chip Foose overhaul in Lotus Europa was absolutely amazing. That was associated with Jay Leno's garage. One of his regulars there had an old Europa, and they basically stretched it a bit to fit in a brand new Lotus Elise engine, and man, that thing is a monster. It looks incredible. And of course, you also have the later twin cams, which actually came out in 1971 and lasted until 1975. And they, of course, had more horsepower and did 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds. So a bit quicker there, but you can get more performance out of these modifications. And that overhauling one is just an absolute beast. It's probably the best one ever built. But I do like this one because it's totally original and it's just a time warp. I mean, to know what it's like to drive a late 60s, early 70s sports car is, well, it's a different feeling. It's a more pure feeling. I mean, this is the sort of feedback you get from a 911. You can feel every little vibration. It's not insulated like a car today. That engine is right behind you, and it's just such a cool feeling. Reminds me of my Austin Healey Sprite. You can check out my reviews of those cars, including Porsche 911. But, you know, it's special driving an old car. It's special driving an old British car like this one. There's a lot of personality to it. There's a lot of character. So, yes, I've met my idol now. I've met my hero. This to me is one of the coolest looking cars out there, and it has not let me down. I'm proud to own this Lotus Europa, and I absolutely love it. It's just an awesome car and an icon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to me on YouTube. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. I'm Drivin Ivan.